On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, the Ukrainians have struck a third Shadow Fleet tanker out in the Black Sea. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So we've been covering this since the attacks at the end of November when the Ukrainians, using these small unmanned surface vessels, struck two tankers, the Kairos and the Viret, out in the Black Sea. Both of them were Gambian flagged, although Gambia had withdrawn the registry from those two vessels. Now we have this third attack against a vessel out in the Black Sea. We're going to look at this along with a whole batch of other ship that's happening out there right now with vessels. The world's oceans are definitely kind of heating up out there. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. So here is the full video. It's 1:08 long. This is from a story posted by Mike Schuller over in G-Captain. Ukraine has carried out a third sea drone attack on a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker in the Black Sea, marking an escalation in Kyiv's campaign to disrupt Moscow's maritime oil trade. Reports indicate the Comoros-flagged Dashan was struck while sailing in Ukraine's exclusive economic zone en route to the Russian port terminal of Novorossiysk. Video footage circulated online shows the tanker was unladen at the time of the attack. The strike on the Dashan follows similar attacks on the Shadow Fleet tankers Kairos and Viret on November 28th and 29th, representing a coordinated effort by Ukraine to target vessels suspected of carrying Russian oil in violation of Western sanctions. The attacks have sent shockwaves through the maritime industry and insurance market in particular, with war insurance costs for ships sailing to the Black Sea spiking dramatically. The Black Sea remains a critical artery for the shipment of grain, oil, and oil products, with its waters shared by Bulgaria, Georgia, Romania, Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine. The Shadow Fleet, a collection of aging tankers, often with opaque ownership structures, has become central to Russian efforts to circumvent Western sanctions on its oil exports. Okay, let's break this down and take a look at this. First, let's take again another look here at the video, but with some details here. So let's take a look. So right here, you can see ship's name, Dashan. You'll see a better image here of it. But right now, what you're seeing is the ship is empty. It is high up on its marks. This is a oil tanker that had just come in from India through the Suez Canal, through the Turkish Straits, and heading up in the Black Sea. These drones you'll see right here are being guided, and they're aiming right there for underneath the engine, the stern area there, to cause the damage. Now, this is a drone that is following, and you'll see the strike here. We believe that was the strike you just saw underneath the starboard quarter there of the vessel. Now, a lot of smoke, a lot of flame here, but notice this is a second strike going in. The ship is fully underway here. You can see the big wake being kicked out here by the vessel, so the ship is not drifting, not at anchor, underway. Now they're going to hit on the port side of the vessel. You'll see the drone coming in there. You can see the Starlink hookup right here coming in. Now, this is, I believe, after that hit. You'll see kind of the darkened hull here. One of the things that sea drones tend to do, because they're going into the side of the vessel, they're not underwater, they're above water, so the charge is above water, and the charge tends to go where the least resistance is, and that's out into the air. So the water and the steel hull kind of pushes that explosion outward. You'll notice that they don't seem to penetrate the hull here. But this is another one of those Sea Baby drones that are coming in. Here you see the FLIR up. This is that forward-looking infrared. Couple of things to note there. I'm going to come back here for just a second here. This large white area, this is the stack. This is that scrubber system right here. So you're getting the heat. You can see the engine room heated up right here. So here they come in again. Again, I think this is another attack. You can see the blackened area of the stern. So they have already been hit. And this is now probably the third drone coming in, or potentially the second drone that hits on the port side. But here you see them coming in. You'll see the strike coming in and then the detonation. This is after several detonations that we've seen. So we've seen a couple of hits here. So multiple sea drones used in these attacks right now. So definitely a more coordinated attack, but we're going to break this down a little bit for you. Now, before we do that, a couple of things on a few of the previous attacks. So this story by Reuters out on December 6th, Bulgaria is rescuing the sanctioned tanker that was hit by Ukrainian drones. They are referring to the Kairos, which has drifted and now anchored off of Bulgaria. It's only about a mile off the coast. The vessel is sitting there heavily damaged. The problem is identifying the owner and the insurance company. Without owners or insurance clearly identified, no one is going to pick up this salvage. There were 10 crew members still on board of the original, approximately 23. Some had been taken off, including the captain and the chief officer, so I'm not sure who is left on board this vessel. At the same exact time, we got two other stories that are going on. We're going to come back to this initial attack, but this story coming out from Maritime Executive: Ukraine seizes cargo ship accused of transporting grain from Crimea. So the security services of Ukraine report that it seized another cargo ship that accuses of having transported grain from Crimea since the beginning of the Russian occupation. Ukraine has in the past seized several ships on similar allegations with a court order, seeks to sell the ships, while it has also moved to prosecute the masters of the vessel, resulting in fines. The latest seizure took place in recent days in the port complex of Greater Odessa. The SBU is not providing too many details, saying only that the vessel is currently flagged in an African country, while Ukraine asserts it is Russian control. The ship had a crew of 16 people from the Middle East. They allege that the ship has repeatedly undergone changes in its name and flag. It was currently in Odessa to export a batch of steel pipes. So Ukraine is not fooling around. They are going after vessels that have been used in the exportation of grain from Crimea. Then you have this story coming out of Venezuela right now, like we don't have enough going on. U.S. seizes oil tanker off Venezuela in Coast Guard-led operation, U.S. officials say. President Trump's administration has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. The officials who were speaking on the condition of anonymity said the operation was led by the U.S. Coast Guard. They did not name the tanker and did not specify where the interdiction took place. Let me be clear. It has to be led by the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard has law enforcement jurisdiction. The Navy does not. Unless you're at war or have a mandate, you have to let the Coast Guard do this. So it was a Coast Guard law enforcement detachment, probably from a U.S. Navy ship, that went ahead and did this. All right, let's go ahead back to the vessel that was just struck. This is the Dashan that was in the Black Sea. So here's our information from Marine Traffic. I noted that in the article by G Captain, they said that the ship was, I believe, Cameroon flagged. It's not. It's Gambian flag is what it's showing right now. So Dashan crude oil tanker built in 2005, so over 15 years old. That's a good sign of a shadow fleet vessel. Carrying capacity 164,000 tons. Her length overall 274 meters. Here's the Dashan's past track coming out of India via the Suez through the Turkish Straits into the Black Sea. Here's her position as of 14 hours and 53 minutes ago, almost smack dab in the center of the Black Sea, indicating the Ukrainians are reaching out quite a bit to come get at that vessel. If we look at the ownership of the vessel, it's Reef Marine out of the Seychelles, and the technical manager is Cande Shipment out of China. When we pull up the compliance feature, we get a couple of alerts here right off the bat. The vessel is sanctioned by both the UK and the EU. It has carried some risk-detected cargo out of Russia. Its trade has also been risk-detected in that process. Its insurance, or the P&I Club, is showing the Britannia Steamship Insurance Association, but only as of 17 December 2024. So we're not exactly sure whether or not the ship has current insurance. Now, these attacks on shipping by Ukraine are having an impact. War risk insurance has spiked up to 250% since the start of November. So we're definitely seeing that impact take place. We're about 0.2, 0.3%, and now we're seeing almost 0.75% out there, with moving up to close to 1%, as war risk insurance is that added money you have to pay to cover that. If you want some of the best coverage for what's happening in the Black Sea, I really recommend heading over to Windward. Windward has this piece from December 10th. Ukraine's drone war on Dark Fleet triggers diplomatic tensions, heightens Black Sea risk. Good friend of the show, Michelle Weiss-Bachmann, is over at Windward. She has been tracking this extensively and, matter of fact, is highlighting some of the big issues. For example, Why is Turkey, for example, allowing ships to transit through the Turkish Straits if those ships have suspected registries, have suspected insurance issues, suspected classification issues? They are creating really prime targets for the Ukrainians to strike at. At the same time, what is happening with the ships that have been struck? We already talked about Kairos being up off the coast of Bulgaria right now, but the Virat, the other ship, has a question. Now we have this attack on Dashan. What happens to this vessel? And you have to raise the question about what are those other ships in the Black Sea? We've got a lot of traffic right now in the Black Sea coming out of the Turkish Straits right here. All the ships in red are tankers, and you can see all of them heading up here toward the Russian coast here. Some head over here to Georgia, but this area right here around the Kerch Strait and the ports have been subjected to multiple attacks during this time. And again, I've mentioned this in the previous video, and I will say it again. This marks an escalation in the maritime war out in the Black Sea. Yes, we've seen Russia and Ukraine strike at vessels from both sides. However, when you saw those strikes, most of them were either in port or the vessels were loaded and just left port. And in the case of Ukraine striking Russia, they were typically military vessels or ships chartered by the military to carry cargo. In the case of the Russians attacking Ukrainians, some of these were grain ships, some of them were ships in port. They were just outside of Ukrainian or right around Romanian waters. This is different as these attacks are taking place in international waters against ships of suspected registries, suspected insurance and classification. All of this is raising the level of cost to do business in the area. It's meant to economically hurt Russia. The fear here is that Russia reciprocates and begins attacking those grain vessels coming out of Ukraine because, again, when you look at the map here, there are these large anchorages right here. This is Romania right here. This is off the Danube. These green vessels here are almost all bulk carriers, and they head up here into the Odessa port and the ports in and around Ukraine. There are no ships showing there right now because the AIS, their automatic information system, is turned off when they head into the region. We're going to keep you up to date on all this, including the Venezuelan seizure by the U.S. Coast Guard. That's a really interesting one. We haven't got any more information on that. When we do, we'll follow up with that. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Till our next episode, Sal, signing off.